$160 million in Bitcoin is very seminal. From a Wall Street perspective, let me explain why. State of Wisconsin has said to themselves, okay, Bitcoin is an asset class. I've got to get it in my tactical and strategic asset allocation mix. It's got to be part of my pie chart, because some consultant's going to come into our state and say, hey, you need to own 1, 2, 3% of Bitcoin. And if you're not long Bitcoin as a state pension fund, you're short Bitcoin.
Anthony Scaramucci is the founder and managing partner of Skybridge Capital, an alternative asset manager and investment advisor, and Dan Tapiero is the CEO and managing partner of 10T Holdings, a growth equity fund that invests in mid to late stage digital asset ecosystem companies. Like many other well-known investors in the space, Scaramucci and Tapiero are very optimistic about the prices of crypto assets, especially as we move deeper into the current bull market. Tapiero even predicts that the total value of all digital assets will reach $1 trillion. BlackRock's interest in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies and digital assets has completely changed how institutional investors in the US see the whole space. The cryptocurrency industry used to be seen as shady and mostly used by criminals and aimless teens living in their parents' basements. But that view changed when the US Securities and Exchange Commission approved several spot Bitcoin ETFs earlier this year. The new products, especially BlackRock's IBIT, broke record after record. Investors now see the huge opportunity the industry offers, especially when compared to traditional assets like stocks and bonds. According to Tapiero, thousands of institutional investors are moving quickly to get on the crypto train before it really takes off, and they miss the chance, even with a low price prediction. Dan thinks Bitcoin will hit $100,000 per coin this bull cycle and another $200. 00 per coin in the bull cycle of 2028 to 2029. We'll show you clips from Scaramucci and Tapiero's most recent interview with OPTO, which they talk about the effects of Bitcoin ETFs and what they think will happen with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies after 2024. Turn on post notifications and like the movie if you want to see more like it. Everything you do for the show helps the YouTube algorithm and makes it bigger.
I don't know. I don't really know enough about NVIDIA or AI to compare it to that exactly. I think at some point they become integrated, but that's a whole other conversation. Look, I think everything changed in the summer. The Larry Fink comments that Bitcoin was a global asset, an important global asset, was a big change from what he'd been saying 2 years previously, that Bitcoin was for fraud and money laundering. $10 trillion wealth manager, we all know about it. And of course, he didn't say those comments without knowing, in fact, that there was going to be an ETF and that they were going to be, one of the big sponsors. So January 11th, all 11 of those ETFs came out. And that's really been a game changer. If you think about looking forward, going forward, you've basically onboarded around $50 to $100 trillion of available capital through equity accounts and brokerage accounts around the world to Bitcoin. I mean, previously you needed to set up a Coinbase account or Kraken or Gemini. Some people weren't really comfortable with that. The entire over age 50 crew, they all have stock accounts. They all have brokers, RIAs. And now they just, can push a button and they own Bitcoin. And so we thought that would be powerful, but it's been a lot more powerful in terms of how it's affected people's mentality in the space. And I tell you this firsthand experience because we have never marketed our funds. We have 1.4 billion AUM now in the 10T1RT funds, never marketed directly to U.S. institutions. We have 2 or 3 institutions, but they're through personal contacts of mine. Texas Teachers is a big investor, as is Michigan's pension fund MERS, but we've never marketed to them. For the first time since I had the idea for this fund in the middle of 2019, New York-based financial institutions are interested in talking to me about what we do. And it's very, very interesting. I never had that kind of reverse inquiry. And remarkably, they're actually starting to move quickly, which is almost an oxymoron, a U.S. Institution moving quickly. They get the ETF. They get the interest that their clients are showing through the ETF. And as you may or may not know, we are the only growth equity fund in the world that's exclusively focused on crypto, blockchain, Web3, digital assets. And so they understand equity and private equity. And so the companies we invest in, they're more developed. They're making $40 to $50 million, I would say minimum for the most part in revenue. It's not really venture. Last thing I'll say is that, Bitcoin and Ethereum, I think, are established assets. They're core assets. That's why they will have ETFs. I think the Ethereum ETF is also a big part of the future. The other cryptocurrencies, they're more venture projects. They're more speculative. I think Solana is maybe moving towards becoming a core asset, but it's not there yet. So I'm very bullish when the slowest part of our world, this U.S. institutional world that has been slowest to the game, they're starting now to pick up interest, and I'm seeing it firsthand. I don't know, Anthony, if you've been seeing it. You're sitting there in New York all the time. I'm in Greenwich, a little outside normally, or in, as I mentioned before, Dorado. No?
Canadian investment fund manager 3IQ Digital Asset Management said last week that it had successfully filed an application to start Solana ETFs. If approved, these will be the first Solana-based ETFs in North America. Here is the tweet from the digital asset management firm 3IQ Corporation is happy to say that we have sent in a preliminary application for the Solana Fund QSOL in Canada in connection with an IPO. This is another example of our commitment to new ideas. If the necessary regulatory approvals are granted, the fund will be the first Solana exchange-traded product to be offered in North America. Investors in Solana were happy to hear the news, and prices have gone up. A little because of hopes for approval. The blockchain network also hit a new high point in the number of active monthly users. According to new data from the blockchain analytics platform Emize, Solana has reached an unprecedented milestone of 30 million active addresses, breaking the previous peak of 25 million active users set in 2022. Like Tapiero Scaramucci, Scaramucci thought Solana would be the next cryptocurrency to get an ETF. In a tweet from last month, he wrote, "We are going to get a SOL ETF. Get ready." During the discussion with OPTO, Scaramucci and OPTO talked more about Bitcoin ETFs and how institutional investors in the US are becoming more interested in anything crypto. Here are some more clips from the video.
Well, yeah, I mean, listen, I think the big thing, Ed, that you need to know from my vantage point is that there's a selling machine that's revved up. Dan and I have been combined on Wall Street for almost 80 years. We sound like a presidential candidate when we say that, but it's a selling machine. Wall Street is this major mechanized selling. And what we are now starting to see is that revving of that engine. So that means BlackRock's got consultants out there telling people they have to own Bitcoin. FAs are out there telling their clients they have to own Bitcoin. Fidelity's doing the same thing. There are other vendors that got their wholesalers out there doing that. And I would love to hear Dan's take on this, but I think the state of Wisconsin announcing that they've got $160 million in Bitcoin is very seminal. From a Wall Street perspective, let me explain why. State of Wisconsin has said to themselves, okay, Bitcoin is an asset class. I've got to get it in my tactical and strategic asset allocation mix. It's got to be part of my pie chart, because some consultant's going to come into our state and say, hey, you need to own 1, 2, 3% of Bitcoin. And if you're not long Bitcoin as a state pension fund, you're short Bitcoin. And you'll start underperforming if Dan and I are correct about this asset. And so those types of things, those rumblings are happening right now. And obviously, I'd love to give Dan's take, of course, but that's what I think is happening.
Yeah, I think that's an important purchase. And I think under the hood, you have other institutions. I mean, I myself have, been involved with that directly. I run the investment committee for an endowment of a school. And I've mentioned this multiple times. And that endowment, we got off zero, which was the, famous Wences Casares rallying point. People in the space know his name. And we went to 1%, and this was an endowment that was $500 million. And we put 1% into Bitcoin and ETH, and then a little bit into a venture fund in the middle of 2019. And that 1%, that 5 million, is well north, let's just say, of 50 million. And so you can see we were, I think, the first high school endowment in the U.S. to invest directly, and I think we were one of the first high schools or colleges to invest directly. And it's had a huge impact. And it was just 1% that we put at risk. That was it. And it's allowed us to outperform many, if not most, of our peers. And I think that the ability of endowments to deal with illiquidity risk is very important. I think the worst thing you can do in this space is to attempt to trade it. Unless you have 20 people working for you and in a 24/7, 365 operation. I mean, I managed a portfolio in the traditional world for over 20 years, with daily mark to market and right there on the firing lines at various hedge funds and my own hedge fund. And, this is 10x more complicated, 10x more difficult. There's 10x the upside, but you have to, be involved in the minutia. Or you can sit back and do what I think you should do, certainly, is own Bitcoin, own Ethereum on a 10-year hold, walk away. And the only people who can do that comfortably, I think, are these very long-term investors like the endowment that I've helped over the years. And, like state of Wisconsin, they can put away 1%. They never have to look at it.
Tapiero says this is the biggest trade in the history of the world. The Federal Reserve is expected to end its quantitative tightening and start a massive macro and crypto summer. Institutional investors will continue to put tens of billions of dollars into Bitcoin and soon Ethereum through spot ETFs. All roads lead to more noise for the U.S. government before the elections in November, which means steadily higher Bitcoin and crypto asset prices before the end of the year. Please share your thoughts on Anthony Scaramucci and Danit Tap's predictions and outlook for Bitcoin and the whole digital asset space in the comments section below. Also, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel and turn on post notifications to get more videos. Thanks for watching.